Hi, I'm Cameron McKenzie at CameronMCNZ on Twitter, and I wanted to talk to you about Struts 2.5 actually, and I wanted to get you started with Struts 2.5 by showing you how you can put together a nice little Hello World application by using Struts 2.5, and a Struts config file. So starting off, I just wanted to show you what version of the Eclipse IDE that I'm using for this Hello World Struts example. You see it's 2020-06, which is fairly current because it's only September 2020 as I do this. And as I start off this Hello World Struts example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new Maven project. And this new Maven project is going to be a basic, simple Maven project. We're going to be creating a war file, so I'm going to change that to war. As far as the group ID goes, I'll call it com.mcnz, and then the artifact ID, I'll just call it Struts Hello World. I think that looks pretty handsome there. I'll click Finish. That creates the basic project, but there will be a couple of annoyances inside of the POM file. So I'm going to open it up. And you notice in this POM file it says, hey, you got a war file here, but there's no web.xml file. And you know what? I'm going to deal with that a little bit later. I will be creating a web.xml file, but I'm in this POM file. In order to work with struts, we need struts. So I'm going to add in a couple of dependencies. I'm going to add in the struts core. I'm going to add in the struts convention plugin. It's going to give me access to annotations and all sorts of great stuff, although I might not use them in this example. This example, I'm going to use pure struts XML. And of course, we're leveraging the servlet API. So you got to have a reference to the servlet API in there as well. Now, my local machine, it has JDK 1.8 installed on it. And in order to make sure everything gets compiled and built using a 1.8 JDK, I just need to add this little Maven plugin that will force that. Now, I know you should slap me on the knuckles for not using the latest long-term support LTS release of Java, which is 1.11, which is 11. But I think a lot of people doing struts might be working on 1.8. So I'm going to leave it at that. Now, my POM's still a little upset because it says, hey, you've added a bunch of dependencies, but you haven't updated your project. So I'm going to go Maven update project. This isn't going to solve my problem with the not having a web.xml file, but it's always a good idea to update your project. Now, as I said, it is still barking at me for not having a web.xml file. And, you know, I'm not someone that likes to leave the POM file hanging. So I'm going to go over here into the web app folder, create a new folder in here. And this folder is going to be called webinf. Now, I don't know if you noticed the subtlety in my voice, but I pronounced that with all uppercase letters. That's the convention. And while the folder is pronounced with uppercase letters, the web.xml file is pronounced with all lowercase letters right there. Now, I'm just going to copy and paste the web.xml file that I got from my GitHub account, and you can get it from my GitHub account too. And it basically has the required preamble and a display name. Like, you don't want to be typing that out all on your own. You don't want to be typing that out all on your own. And for that matter, all of the struts configuration happens right in here. We configure a filter, and this filter is mapped to the everything URL pattern. And what this does is this means, you know, the web.xml file, the whole web project is going to make sure that every single request that comes in is going to go through this struts filter. And that struts filter is the gateway to struts. So that means every request response cycle is going to get handled by struts in this application. Now, one thing I should point out, this package has changed from version 2 of struts to version 2.5, which I'm using right here. If you, for some reason, aren't copying my POM and you're using 2.4 or something earlier in here, maybe you copied and pasted a web.xml file from the internet that references the older package, you might get an error that says, hey, I can't find this particular file. If that's the case, make sure the package name is correct here. That's probably the problem if you do run into that. Okay, I'm going to click Control S there. It looks like at this point I've got my basic project set up. My POM file is no longer complaining about the lack of a web.xml file. And so I'd say it's time to go in and maybe add an HTML file. We want to have some input here. So I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it I'll call it index.html. I'll make this just a basic HTML file. And in this HTML file, I just want to basically say to the user, hey, what's your name? And so it's going to say, hey, may I ask your name? And then this is the input page. Let's see if I can run this input page. What happens if I try and say run on server? Can we actually just see what this page looks like? Okay, there we go. May I ask your name? And it's going to default to world. The user will click submit, and then hopefully when the submit runs, it'll go to the server. The server will do some processing, and then it'll print out hello, and in this case, world, because somebody typed in world. You can change that and put your own name in there, and then it'll say hello Cameron or whatever. I mean, we've got the ability to do that, but that's kind of where we're going, and this is the HTML page that embodies that code. Now, there's a couple of interesting things happening here. Notice that first of all, it goes to the hello action, and I'll call that the hello. Yeah, I'll leave that as the hello action. That's fine. And so we've got an action that we call. The action will be configured on the server. It'll be the action will be a class that's created on the server. We've got a field called first name here. So we get that first name field. The first name field will actually map to a property in the action over on the server. So whatever somebody types in here will get sent to the server and can be processed. And I guess we've got an input button here. So I guess those are the key things. We've got this input field called first name, uppercase N in name there. It's calling an action. And I guess if we're calling an action and that action should be able to handle that first name, well, I guess we should probably code an action class that can handle a property called first name. So I'm going to go over to my Java project here, and I'm going to create a new class. I'm going to put in the com.mcnz.struts package. And what is the name going to be? Well, we'll call it the Hello World Action, maybe something handsome like that. And I think that's about it. It's just a Pojo, right? You don't have to inherit from anything. Just have to have that class created, and Bob's your uncle. Now, we do have this field called first name. And so for every field that you have on an input field, you want to have a private variable. I'm going to make this a string, call it first name. And then I'll add the requisite setters and getters. So generate the getters and setters for first name. And so that maps all the properties from the HTML form, and that's the form object there, to this action bean. And the other thing, all of these action beans are supposed to have an execute method. You can kind of play around with the name of the method, but that's the convention. So you want an execute method in here. And in this execute method, well, you can play around with the variable. I don't think I'm going to play around with it too much. I'm just maybe going to print it out to the console. And then when you're done these methods, you're supposed to return a string, like success or failure or, step 2 of the wizard, something like that. So I'm just going to return the string success. Right? That's we'll say that this was a successful processing. It's just a hello world. But yeah, in here you kind of do all of your processing. And for that matter, you delegate to Java Beans, Pojos, EJBs, what other components, session facades that will actually do the heavy lifting for you. But that's kind of the idea of that section there. And then finally, when we have success, this word success is supposed to be mapped to another JSP that will display the results. And so, you'll usually have results JSP. And I'll create a new file. I'll call it results.jsp. And when there's success, you end up going to the success JSP or the results JSP. And here, all I want to do is I just want to go out and say, hey, hello. And if somebody's typed in, I want to say hello world. If they typed in Cameron, I want to say hello Cameron. And so here's some of the stuff going on in this page. We had a tag lib for the special struts tag library. It's got the prefix S, so you can see that tag being used here. This is a tag that just looks for any property inside of your associated action class or associated Java Bean. We've got one called first name here. And you can see here we try and get that first name property. So that's what this tag library is all about, trying to be able to extract properties from your Java Bean, from your action class. We're going to say hello based on what that property was. This is just requisite stuff for a JSP. Just make sure that the entire framework knows that we're actually working with a JSP that's going to generate HTML. And then I guess the rest of the stuff here, well, that's all just boring, regular HTML, right? That's really the crazy stuff here. Now, one thing I haven't talked about is how this index.html binds itself to the action class. You can see it says hello action here, but a web server on its own is not going to have any idea what hello.action is. And we want to map that to this hello world action. And then this hello world action, when it says success, we want to map that to the results JSP. And all of that is done through the use of a struts configuration file. We can actually use annotations. I've got another tutorial that shows you how to do a very similar hello world application with annotations. In this example, I'm going to use the struts config file. And so the struts config file, it's just going to be called struts.xml, and the convention is to throw it in this resources folder here. So I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it struts.xml. And in here, I'm going to put all of the mapping. Now here you got the preamble that's required. Here's the meat that's interesting though. I'm going to have a basic namespace here for my package. That's just a basic default namespace that all of the good information is going to be wrapped up in. And then inside you can see that I've got this action named hello. And you can see that that's this one here, right? Hello.action. That's how we map the entry in the form to the action class itself. So going back to the struts.xml file, you can see that that hello action is really mapped to this hello world action class, com.mcnz.struts.hello world action. The method to call in that class to run this action is execute. That's the basic convention. And if we have a result that returns the string success, and we do have that in our code, return success, then we'll forward someone to the results.jsp page, which is this page right here, which should display hello world if they haven't typed their name in, and then just hello, whatever their name is, if they do. And so that's how we tie all of those pieces together. The input field, often known as the controller, the model, often known as the action class. I guess that could be the controller too. Probably your model is really the Java beans and your domain classes. And then finally, I guess you can consider this a part of the view. Okay, and that's all of the pieces together. So I'm going to give this a try, see if I can run this. Delete that there. And then I'll run this again. So right click, run as, run on server, accept the default for my Tomcat, let everything deploy, and then we get this page that starts up that says, may I ask your name? I'm going to leave it as world. Click submit. Program runs. You notice that down here it says the value of first name is world. That was just printed out from the hello world action, right? That's what we typed in here. In some of our logic, we return success, which forwards someone to the JSP page, which kind of types at the top. It's the results page, and then we say hello, whatever was typed in. And of course, we had left it typed in world, so now we say hello world. And there you go. That's a basic round trip with a Hello World's struts application. And there you go. That's how you put together a nice little Struts Hello World application using Struts 2.5 and the Struts config file. Now, by the way, I've got another tutorial that deals with Struts 2.5 fully with annotation configuration. So if you want to see how you can do a zero config Struts 2.5 application, check out that tutorial as well. Now, if you enjoyed this tutorial, why don't you head over to theserverside.com. We've got lots of great tutorials on Struts, other enterprise frameworks like Spring and Hibernate, and of course, anything to do with enterprise software development we cover over there. If you're interested in my personal antics, you can follow me on Twitter at CameronMCNZ and subscribe on YouTube.